Quiz.
Here we go. Hello, it is Matterall. Let's talk some EVE Online. It is August 6th, 2020. I'm going to stick with that. Here
Good
with some
enough.
friends. McLeod, Caleb, Fonsway. Is Tiberius still in here?
Yes.
All right.
We are what Matterall is it calls tech support.
All right, let's get you guys down here. All right, thanks for joining us. Let's go into what's going on in EVE Online. What are we going to talk about today? It's a few things, right?
There was a massive Singularity patch yesterday.
What was on the Singularity patch?
Let's see. So the armor resist mod, Tyricide is on there. There is a lot of attribute updates for, I think, effectively every single invasion NPC. The Trig ones and the Empire ones, all of them are notable changes, and multi contract for assembled ships.
Mm-hmm.
That
And
is
the storms,
music
right?
to particular people's ears.
And as we all know, the storms. So those that data got patched into Singularity. I don't know if they're active. I haven't looked.
Yeah. I'm going to crank you guys a little bit on volume just so we can... I think you're coming in a little low, but actually... Oh, check this out. We got this new feature. There's Caleb.
Yay.
What's up, fellas? All right. Yeah, the new multi... There is a new... We saw that in the... what do they call those things?
Which?
I keep calling it skunk, but it's not skunk. It is... you see the database?
Hobo Leaks.
Hobo Leaks, yeah. I keep confusing it with Skunkworks.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, Hobo Leaks had some stuff on multi-contracts, which means you can do what and who's that going to help? What scenarios are going to help in?
So it appears that you can make individual contracts for single ships, but you just select, a whole bunch of them, and it makes identical contracts for each ship. So that's like individual ones as opposed to a bunch of them in a single.
Who's that for?
Probably people who are building ships and distributing them.
I've heard it's going to help logistics quite a bit from larger alliances, for instance.
Yeah, so you basically make, instead of so right now in game we have this janky kind of copy existing contract. So this is kind of an evolution of that. This lets you do it in one step.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. Somebody's lives are... So you can multi-buy, you can multi-fit, and now you can multi-contract. All three of those things are... So one player can create a batch of 10, 20, 50 of the exact same ship and sort that out and hand it out to players.
Yeah, it's basically... that entire process in the past was manual, and bit by bit they have taken away, the manual bits and added automation for that.
Okay, so that's what they call quality of life changes. Cue Caleb's rant about individual contribution being sidelined for ease of use.
Don't cue me like it's some sort of playlist.
I mean, what?
I don't know. I don't think even Caleb would have a problem with this one. Come on.
No, not really. I do think that the era of horrible quality of life changes is almost over. Haven't seen any of those recently, really.
But it is... go ahead, Tiberius.
I was going to say, in my opinion, the Tyricide quality of life thing is freaking cancer, but that's... that's a horse of a different color to a certain extent.
You mean So the tier side did a couple of things. It changed a couple of the actual effectiveness of the modules. Most of them were buffed. A very, very few of them got a very, very, very small nerf. But mainly, what they're doing is just cleaning up the meta. There were redundant modules, useless modules, inconsistent naming. So what we end up with is highly consistent naming across modules, not only in the same group, but across modules in different groups. What we also end up with is a bunch of people who've been playing EVE Online for 17 years and don't like to change what they memorized.
Well, I have ranted on the whole naming convention thing before. I do like the RP and lore-centric naming of modules instead of this functionality-based one, but that's really an opinion issue.
Oh, they didn't take that away. They just rearranged some of the words. Like, they replaced a couple of the words, but mainly it was just rearranging things. Like
they have discontinued a few traditional names and replaced them with basically a functional name instead.
Yeah, so I think that a lot of players who have memorized things and been through the abuse of the not so great naming are going to be annoyed because they have to learn new stuff. But if we think about this from the perspective of players coming in, not knowing these things and learning to fit ships, this is a huge improvement.
Yeah, we're talking about renaming of modules that have been called the same thing for 10, 15 years. Now they have new names that don't have anything to do with the old names, so older players are stumbling around trying to describe a module that they used to call something like invulnerability fields or whatever.
Yeah.
Looks away in shame. I've been playing since 2006.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like, listen, I memorized all the names just like everybody else, but like I don't feel bad that I have to, change my memory now and learn different names. Like, if it makes more sense, then I don't care if I have to change.
All right. So anyway, the new feature though that's coming in, and we looked at it, is multi-contracts, which allow you to take, I don't know how it works yet, but I believe you can take maybe 10 objects and say one contract for each of these objects, probably.
So the problem with talking about multi-contracts is that we've seen the strings, all the text, every bit of text that goes in that box, in that dialogue, every step of the way through is on HoboLeaks now because it was sent out to the Singularity client. So if you have that installed, you have the files, HoboLeaks parses it, we see the text. But CCP hasn't told us anything about it yet, so we don't know like what they intend to do with it or anything. So it's difficult to speculate right now.
So we don't know. Okay.
But you can go and you can use it. Like, you can go onto Singularity and it's active right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay. So here's what I was trying to get Caleb triggered on, and that is, it used to take like a very dedicated player or players to go out and buy all this equipment, put it together, and then one by one put it on the exclusive contract system for your fellow courtmates, so that only your courtmates could get the ships, or only your alliance mates could get the ships. They couldn't be bought in public. But
this does not affect anything ecosystem or economy wise, or even market wise. If anything, it benefits it. It adds the potential of more efficient competition for anyone that actually uses it in public, and for alliances that use this for internal use. This is a real quality of life improvement. All the things regarding, say, call it scripting or multi-buy or multi-contract and all of that stuff, it's really, really useful. What we haven't got yet is a proper upgrade to the UI and things like search functions and filtering, which is something we've been needing for a long
God,
time.
now I'm triggered.
Wait, stop touching your nose. It's COVID era.
He's at home alone, man.
That's true. He's safe. Why are you triggered, Fonse?
Because Caleb is 100% right. The UI needs a lot of work, like a lot of work. There are parts of it that I would throw out entirely. There are parts of it that just need revamps. It's extremely limiting.
It's just not inviting. It's not inviting to use, right? So when you take something like courier contract sorting, it's not efficient. It's not the right data that's available. So you have to sit there and do it mentally by yourself or using Excel sheets. The same with search functions in contracts in general, and filtering and getting it to a point where it almost works as a storefront for you. These things just don't work. It is completely broken when we talk about 2020 UI based, right? But the problem is that it's so old and it's so tied into so many things that I don't think that it's easy. This is why when we got the whole new node thing with the what's it called, the net thing,
Hypernet.
Yeah, the Hypernet. I argued that they should use that as an actual UI for the database content of contracts, because that's such an obvious solution to this. Instead of trying to fix what we already have, just use that as a UI overlay, right? So it becomes the contract browser, but it hasn't materialized yet. And I do appreciate that it is a lot of work to actually sit down and do something like this. But I do think that it's important that we get that discussion going instead, because one of the things I believe is the reason that our public courier contract stuff is not as efficient and say popular as it should be is mainly because of that thing.
Yeah, anything that improves quality of life by removing like asinine UI restrictions is good in my book.
And it's also one of the places where they could experiment a little bit with write permission on APIs, so we can actually have some sort of out of game, out of client usage of this, right?
The API needs to be there's a bunch of stuff that actually needs to be in the API that isn't. It is very good though. The API is in a pretty good place, but the fact that Triglavian invasions are not accessible in the API is basically an oversight, or just like someone hasn't been assigned to it or gotten around to it or cared enough to do it. And that's extremely frustrating, because that does exist for incursions, just not invasions. It's not, this isn't a balanced decision that there's no API. It's we didn't do it.
What is on that whiteboard behind you?
Right now, it's just some notes on ideas for articles. I did tell you about the fact that I got the official media basically came to the same conclusions as I did on my theory of cannabis in Old Testament era.
What?
Well, we were reading. I know this is a complete segue. I was reading Book of Job and Book of Jonah in Hebrew class, right? And
as one does.
Yeah, as one does when you study theology. So my takeaway was, this sounds like they're talking about cannabis or some sort of psychedelic psychopharmac activity, right? The plant in the Book of Jonah, the kikayon, which no one knows exactly what that plant is a very fast growing plant, quote unquote. Cannabis grows really fast, right? And my
I wouldn't know.
was, the whole story is about this dude that seems very bipolar in his behavior. So the fact that God gives him this magical plant makes me conclude that must be cannabis. And then there's a lot of other stuff with hotboxing and the traditions of the Mitanni and those groups up there. Actually,
me and you are going to talk later.
What?
Well, the point is that then I concluded that whole thing is about cannabis and the introduction of cannabis in the Middle East. And I kind of talked to my professor about it, and he said that I could read a bit about the whole plant thing somewhere. And then there was an article and an archaeological find that actually proves that there was cannabis in Old Testament times, and it was used ritualistically. So I was almost confirmed in everything I just theorized. So that was just funny. Yeah, and that's actually up on the board as well.
That's on the board. That's what's back there.
We're going to talk about that later, Caleb.
All right. Funny stuff later. We'll go back to that topic later. Okay, so other things that have happened in the last day. Let's see if we can move over to the Dotlan.
Matter, your mic is a little blown out.
Yeah, it crackles.
Too hot.
Could Fonsui maybe just comment on that weird image of the Triglavian station thing?
So that station is actually interesting because it's funny that people noticed it today. Like people noticed it yesterday and today. But if you pop up your launcher, it's the background, and it's been there for a month.
And it's been featured pretty heavily.
Text chat if you search for the image.
Yeah, it's the launcher and the login screen have had this image for like a month now, or at least like 2-3 weeks, if not longer. So
it's called Zenith, right?
It was featured fairly heavily in the Zenith sort of trailer as well. So like I don't understand why people didn't like kind of twig and go, "What's that? I wonder what that could potentially be." Like,
yeah, it's funny when people notice things. But yeah, so that's a station. People, when they first saw it, they were like, "Oh, it's the arena, because they were just thinking about the arena." But it's very clearly the station. Yeah, there it is with the singularity ball in the middle, the trigularity.
Yeah, but it's zoomed in so much that you don't think about it, and when you have it in your in your launcher, right, you have all the other things on top of that. So you don't really notice, right? It's like, oh, it looks like it's always like maybe there's a color change. I don't know what's in that background. I'm not going to check it. So I completely missed that.
Yeah, a lot of people thought it was the arena or the arena structure, but it's not because it doesn't have the spires and it doesn't have the timer.
I get you.
And it has this black ball in the middle.
What's that?
Yeah, and the trigularity is not in the arena.
But it's very pretty, and that whole thing in the middle must be able to do some sort of Triglavian doomsday device. So that's interesting.
So Spod was looking at this yesterday, and he pointed out there were a couple of points on there that you can see the little lighted lines from the edge that look like docking ports. So on the left, so on the front edge in that image, on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, and smack in the middle, on the front edge, you can kind of see those little lines of docking lights. And yeah, it's called TGS in the files, and it's in a directory called Station 2.
Wow! So we could do talking in Triglavian stations sometime soon.
Yeah, like so. I think that this is so. When we had Sledgehammer and Coyote on, and they talked about their journey of developing this feature, the invasion feature from chapter 1, 2, 3. They pretty much, I don't think they said it in so many words, but they pretty much said that these systems that have been flipped to final liminality are not going back, and there have been other indications over the course of the invasion that these NPCs are here to stay, and this is just their this entire 2-year period has been their introduction into the game. So I strongly suspect that what we're going to see is in the systems that are final liminality, we may have permanent NPC stations that look like this. And this is my speculation, by the way, just to be clear.
And Matt, you have to remember that Triglavian seems to be a Slavic language. So you have to get Russian speakers like Spot and CCP Alpha and
I have Tiberius here.
I can.
Yeah, I can help. Right.
What are we talking about? I'm sorry, I was zoned out.
We're talking about Triglavian language being Slavic.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense in the way that their sentence structure is set up. In terms of like its direct translation from English to Slavic or Russian, that would make sense.
Yeah, and then in the recordings, when Zoria Triglov speaks to us, the feminine voice is like super Russian.
Yep.
Yeah, plus there's a little bit of open comms in there too because they talk over each other all the time. Yeah, so somebody's asking, are you okay? You look really tired. Yeah, that's kind of my face these days. No, I woke up.
Oh, God.
I woke up after like 3 hours of sleep. I had some kind of stress dream, I guess. So I woke up and I thought, I'm going to try to see if I can get this computer working, because this is our first day on a PC, on a Windows.
Yeah, Mallory, you messaged me at like 8:30, which is a completely normal time for me in the morning, but that's like 5:30 in the morning for you.
I'd already been up a while too. I was like, I better not.
Yeah.
Better not bother East Coast guys. It's too early for them. So yeah.
Says the West Coast man.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for asking. Yeah, the Argentinian look. My wife's Argentinian, so it doesn't hurt me to look like part of her tribe. Okay, so that was, there's a couple things there. We talked about the multi-contract system that we saw. We also talked about the new Triglavian ship. We'll give you one more look at that. Looks something like that.
There's another little Triglavian thing in there as well.
Oh.
It seems like well, it's Triglavian and Edencom stuff in actual fact. Like, so the Verposts, the Triglavian sentry guns, as well as the Edencom Gunstars. They are actually getting a change in their
scan res.
Yeah, so they're not going to be
they don't insta-lock anymore.
So is that
oh my god,
is that better or worse?
No, that's excellent.
It's good for just general capsuleers for sure, because like if you've been through if you've traveled even in an Instalock Scepter, or maybe not an Instalock Scepter, but if
you could have a one tick align. You could have a one tick align ship, and it was not good enough. They had So to be clear about what was done, their scan res is now like 100, 105 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They had no scan res before. There was no scan res attribute on them at all. So they were literally insta-locking.
I have something for Funsui. I don't know if he's noticed, because he's most likely not nitpicked on Hobo Leaks. But if I'm not mistaken, in the DX9 files, there's a Darkstorm.
You mean like they considered that weather and didn't put it in?
Well, that it might actually be in there. It's just not been activated or decided what it's going to be yet, because that means that there are actually 5 storms, right?
Yeah, because I complained about that yesterday, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. And it looks like it is in there. It's just we haven't been told what it is.
Well, I guess it's time for me to start digging. But yeah, so these guns now, they have about 100 or so scan res, and they had none before. And the lack of that attribute at all made that they insta-locked. So you could have a one-tick align ship, and it didn't matter. You were still locked and finished.
I see.
The reason why that was such a big issue was because, it's not like a player locking you, because when a player's locking you, they have to deal with obviously the ping to the server and the ping, and then the server ping back to you, right?
And then the ping to their brain.
Yeah, as well. So, but because these are NPCs and they're on the server already, it was literally like straight away.
So, in other words, if you were targeted by them, it was unescapable. You were targeted so quickly, you had no time to do any evasive maneuvers. You were just attacked.
I had a guy in my friends group who was literally bumping battle cruisers and blingy battleships, and he stacked up 178 kills and somewhere in the neighborhood of like 50 to 60 billion inside of 24 hours because of that mechanic. And yeah, he made off like a bandit, abusing that particular mechanic itself, because they bounce around from gate to gate depending upon who's where and who's doing what. So it was pretty cancerous for people moving in and out of those systems.
I mean, the Triglavian version has on Zkill like 1.83 trillion, and it is around for like a month, so it's like 30 billion a day or something.
Yeah, it was pretty ridiculous. And they were dropping these things on stations, on gates, just all over the place. You were just finished. I lost a pod to one of those things too.
But the thing is, that particular technique that your friend was kind of doing, like, he can still do that. Because locking up, even though it has a scan res now of 100, it still means that, like, if you're bumping stuff, like, you will still lock up and still apply DPS. It just means that, like, those near insta warp kind of ships and pods and stuff like that aren't going to be just blapped out of existence, kind of thing. Like, you can still, if you can take a hit from them, you can still align out and warp off. Like, it just means along the lines that just don't get scrammed by any NPC Triglavian stuff, and don't get bumped by somebody out of alignment.
Didn't Spod get a jump freighter destroyed by them?
I'm pretty sure he did, but I don't like to remind him of that.
Yeah, I see him in the audience, so I was trying to make fun of him. Ouch.
So, by the way, it should be noted that people can pretty much avoid those guns entirely.
I did get a jump freighter.
There he is.
There you go. Sorry, man. So if you're on a character that doesn't engage in the invasion at all, and you want to be safe, then you can take your character that has not engaged in the invasion and run it over to an Edencom minor victory and shoot one battleship. You be in a Corvette, shoot one Edencom battleship, not a player, an NPC, and they'll kill you, and you go away, and it's fine because you're in a Corvette, you lost nothing. And then you will be neutral to the Triglavians and neutral to Edencom, and nothing will shoot you. I'd also like to disagree with the name I can't read in chat that says, guess we all agree the Trig situation got out of hand.
Scaradon.
He's wrong. It did not.
Right? Or...
No, the guy above Scaradon.
Lixerin.
This Trig situation is absolutely not out of hand, and I don't know why anyone would say that it is.
Maybe another interesting thing is that the patch on HoboLeaks has a really big balance change to invasion entities as well, based on Edencom factions. Because at the moment it's pretty unbalanced in the sense that Amar rats are auto-winning against Triglavian ships, so invasions in Amar territory tend to lean towards Edencom, but Kaldari rats are leaning towards losing to Triglavian NPCs, so Kaldari systems in general lean towards Triglavians, and you can see it in the outcomes where invasion system victories are, and they have now put in a pretty big rebalance for both these sorts.
So what you're talking about is actually very interesting, because we haven't had rats fight each other like this before, like ever. This is like a whole new thing. So for the guys building this content, it was kind of a learning process to balance NPCs against each other. So what you were describing of the Amar being just more powerful than the Triglavians, and the Triglavians just being more powerful than the Kaldari, is absolutely true. So what they've done to remedy this is they've given all of the Kaldari NPCs 40% EM resist in their shields, where it was 0 before, so the missiles were wrecking them. Now that's not going to happen. And the Amar, all of the Amar Ewar has been significantly nerfed. The newt, the disruption, all that. It's longer cycle time, costs more capacitor, newts for less. The disruption hits for less.
Sounds like a sale.
Yeah, so all of that stuff was changed. Almost every single invasion NPC, Empire and Triglavian, was slowed down significantly. Their maximum velocity and their orbit velocity were both changed. And there were some other changes that were made as well.
So, Francois, are you going to speculate on what the actual effects of that ghost patched Dark Storm is, or it's going to be?
I mean, I'm looking at the files now, and I suspect that they considered it and rejected it, or they may add it later. But like, they went ahead and announced, the feature. We're putting this in. Like Fozzie posted on the forum, these are the weathers. This is how it is. No indication of anything else. So I suspect that this was considered and rejected.
So how these like, because we're going to get into these storms now. Like, are these storms localized into a certain grid, or are they like?
It's actually so Fozzie explains in detail what they do. There is a core single solar system, and it's a number of jumps, just like the old invasions from Chapter 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 jumps out from, 1 jump out from the core. The core and 1 jump out are strong effects. 2 jumps and 3 jumps out are weak effects. And that core will move by 1 jump every 24 to 48 hours.
Okay, so Goonie DuPont says, that's what I don't like about TIS. So many times TIS is wrong about the facts.
What are we wrong about? Oh, remember drifter incursions that happened before. Yes, so if you listen to the words that I used, I was very careful. We have had NPCs engage each other here and there, but it was never like a long running piece of content that with actual outcomes that were determined by what the NPCs did. That, like, there was no permanent impact. They weren't necessarily there wasn't a lot of thought put into it. It was old AI. This was intended from the start to be an integral part of the mechanic.
Okay.
Yeah, the 1 or 2 times where NPCs have attacked each other, like they've been brought up in sort of like, you know, presentations and stuff, or, you know, in sort of like Vegas and FanFest and stuff before, you know, with regards to nobody actually saw the fight between those 2 NPCs, but it caused, you know, time dilation. It caused like server load issues, you know, which they kind of had to redress because like they didn't specifically want at that particular time to have NPCs just causing server load and degrading the game, basically the game experience for players. So they had to kind of turn that off until they could figure out like a better way of doing it. And obviously, this is kind of like the better way of them of doing it, because it actually it provides interesting results for players.
Yeah, so this is the first time they've like really doubled down and made that a core mechanic of a piece of content. So it's important that it got balanced.
One thing to note in regards to all the changes as well, especially Station, is that they now have, as far as we know, basically finished the sync between Serenity and Tranquility. At least all the Serenity outcomes we have observed a week ago are now transposed into Tranquility. So if they want to make bigger changes to the systems on a map level, they now are at a state where they could do it with the synced outcome states, basically.
By the way, so to Goonie DuPont's point, did we get something wrong or not? I just want to clarify that.
No, it was good that he brought it up so that we could clarify, because it is important to note that NPCs engaging with each other directly has been a long running thing. Like, we want this, we want to do this, can we do it? Right now we can't, this and that. We tried it, it didn't work. There was this problem or it wasn't fun or whatever, but it's actually happening now.
Yeah.
And they're not removing it, they're balancing it when it doesn't work.
They actually wrote an article about it. The biggest battle at EVE Online that nobody ever saw. They talked about it. Okay, well, we have
now
about 10 minutes. Go ahead.
One of the things I wanted to kind of say, because just kind of looking through this Fuzzy post about the storms, so I think one of the probably the hot kind of talking point about these storms is one of these storms, specifically the metaliminal electrical ray storm, has an effect on it that I think a lot of people will be somewhat triggered about, to a degree. I think Fonzo, you know which one I'm talking about. Right?
Sorry, I was looking at Hobo for 1 second. Which weather were you mentioning?
The metaliminal electrical ray storm.
Oh, are you talking about the cloaking?
Yeah, so it has a feature where basically it has an effect where basically you can't cloak in the system, where it's like, even if it's a weak effect. So if it's a strong effect or a weak effect, if it's a metaliminal electrical ray storm, you can't cloak.
Yeah, so what's interesting about that is that no cloak and the last line on that, the bonus, the additional content that's available is more relic sites.
Yeah, it's an explorer storm. That's why we
it's an
call
explorer
it storm chasing, because explorers might venture into those, take the risk of not having a cloak, but get all the bonuses.
Well, that's the thing. If you're exploring in nullsec, you're supposed to be in an interceptor, not something with covops. And like cloaks are for AFKing, not for actual explode. So what the result here is that you're in an interceptor, you have 2 tick align, you have bubble immunity, and no one can cloak and jump you.
Well, next time, McLeod, you have to come to the first 2 sessions where we talk about no cloaking storms, so that we don't have to bring it up on the 3rd session.
Wow, shots fired.
But okay, that's all right.
Yeah, it's so just to review, it's like it's not just relic sites and no cloak. It is plus virus hit points, virus coherence, and probe strength. So like it's just explore all the way down.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have Teddy Murray jumped in here. It's a good group. Teddy, didn't something come up with you? Oh, you're the one that made the meme. That was a crack.
It's the low effort meme.
That low effort meme was so funny. Yeah.
I just want to clarify. I made like a loud kind of statement. I said cloaks are for AFKing, and that got a reaction from chat. I want to clarify. For explorers in nullsec in an interceptor, cloaks are for AFKing.
Teddy, do you have anything you want to say? Any viewpoints?
That increase in probe strength, I'm pretty sure will apply to combat probes as well. So it should be easier to probe down interceptors or anyone that still runs slippery peaks or anything like that.
Ooh, so a little better hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. All right, a little more news, and then we got to go. I have to take off and do real life. I'll be back later. Maybe we'll stream a second time. I'm going to practice a few with this. But the cool thing is now I can actually stream the game, use the game map, and all that kind of stuff. So there's going to be some streams that aren't going to be just news. I'm actually stream the game, and who knows, maybe do some sightseeing and tell you about different systems in different regions as I move around. We'll go to battle sites and talk about what happened there. I always like doing those kinds of things. Of course, I am occasionally will get killed on the way, so that kind of doesn't help. But
I do want to reiterate that I hope Fonsui is wrong, and I really hope that CCP is like ninja patching the dark storms and that they are completely different from the normal storms. Maybe
I was disappointed when they weren't in.
Well,
so let's explain that for people that don't understand. There are 4 storms that have an abyssal background. That's where they come from. But the abyssal invasions, I believe, the abyssal space that these come from have 5 storms, and the one that was left out was called a dark storm.
Yeah, if you go to your agency browser, you can actually see them, and you can see those explanations of what the effects of them are. And one of the things about the dark is that it's a speed buff and a close quarters change. And I would just like to see something like that in combination with maybe something like removal of local chat, because I would hope that they use this as an experiment and maybe make them completely microscopic, so they only actually come into one system at a time. Something like that, right? I just think it's obvious that maybe it's something that got shelved, as Fonsui says. Perfectly valid, right? It's very likely. But it is also potentially thing that CCP said, okay, we're going to do something strange and weird with the 5th one, and we're not going to announce it. We're going to let people actually have the surprise and the shock of these small things that are also.
Oh my God, the salt! Oh my God.
Okay, all right, we'll take the salt offline. We got to run. There is one other piece of news. Looks like Volta lost their last major corporation, I believe. Let me get you the name of that. They've had 2 corporations leave in the last few, but I think it was Origin left before. or that never materialized with them. You also had PNIF Smashes Corporation take off. And now you have Russian Thunder Squad leaves Volta. And so that was, I think, one of their major alliances. I think they've had trouble ever since they left Thera and jumped out. But there's still some groups in there. We have some friends that are in Volta, so maybe they're still kicking around doing stuff. We'll see. Anything else?
So, there also seems to have, like, fairly recently, within the last hour to 2 hours, like there was a kind of a scuffle between Fraternity and Army of Mangoes randomly.
Oh, that's an interesting little sub conflict these days.
So this happened in Paragon Sol in 0SUF TAC 3. Literally today at around 1500 Eve time. And it seems as though, like, because, you know, obviously we don't have that much information about it at the moment. Like, obviously there'll be information leaking out about, like, what actually happened and stuff like that, you know, as time progresses. But it seems as though a Fraternity Munin fleet or large Munin gang tackled some Army of Mango's super carriers. Whether they were moving or not, I don't know. But it involved it. You know, there were some subcaps lost from both sides. No supers actually died, but interesting that happened.
These are two Chinese alliances that are enemies of one another, but they happen to both be allies to Test. So it's an interesting little triangle there, especially during Test's attempt to invade Delve. So we'll see how that turns out. Okay, we got to go there. We're going to send you over to Ron. We'll be back later on, do some more streaming. Take care, everybody, and thank you guys for watching. Where's the button? Here it is. All right, we're 3, 2, 1, finishing up.